1,100 square feet courtyard started, grown this much. I couldn't believe it. But thank you for nice introduction. It's Brandy. One thing I like to introduce my youngest daughter. When I commissioned the substantial job in Morikami in Florida, that's 1999, I needed help. And I know she is graduating Brown University, and do you have a job? Come help me. 1.5 years, signed the contract. I should get kicked up my nest about 2-3 years, but now 25 years working. I cannot get rid of her. But anyway, has been 25 years side by side work with me, and what my mission is, our company mission is, she's the one understanding right now. So some work, some about the Japanese garden, tell you tonight.
For the record, I did have a job right after graduating from college, but I quit it to come work with my father because I thought it would be the only chance I had in my life to spend 1.5 years working with him. But like he said, it's been a long time. And, if the job description had said professional sidekick for 25 years, I don't know if I would have taken it, but I am really fortunate to be here today with him and to have been a part of Kurisu's evolution itself and every major project in the last 25 years. My sister also works for the company, and early on, we realized that accidentally calling Hoichi Papa in business meetings was not professional, and so we settled on HK. And it was way easier for many Americans to pronounce. And he already sounded famous, like a tycoon, like a Texas tycoon, HK. So today, HK and I will be tag teaming. I will be offering some context and a little bit of history, and HK will dig into design and philosophy. When people hear what we do, we make Japanese gardens. Often they say, oh, I love Japanese gardens, they're so beautiful. And I'm pretty sure that when they say that, they don't have this in mind. The wastewater treatment facility in Albany. Now, you saw a lot of our work in the film. You'll see some of these pictures again. It's a huge facility. Has anyone been there to Talking Water? Oh, wonderful. It's been a while for me, but I walked it shortly after we completed, and it was quite a project. For those of you who don't know, there's conventional wastewater treated before it's released into a natural treatment system where the wetland cells mimic the environment. So you're actually further cleaning and cooling the water, adding good nutrients to it before it's released into the river. And I believe, as the story goes, we never thought we would be there either, that the visionary behind Talking Water Gardens, Diane Taniguchi-Dennis, had heard that something was going on here, and in fact, I believe it was this garden that it was under construction, and drove over here to see what this healing garden business was about. And HK was having lunch and saw a city truck kind of, patrolling around and tried to hide. He thought maybe he was in trouble. But it turned into a really wonderful collaboration. She got him, and we ended up designing about 7 or 8 waterfalls for this area. If you've been there, you've seen different destinations, sculpting pathways and bridges. One wetland led to another. Diane moved up to Forest Grove, invited us to their new facility, a 700-acre wetland, which if you haven't been, I encourage you to go. It's also lovely and teeming with life. 5 million gallons a day of water are treated conventionally and also released into this natural treatment system. We designed corridors. So, the open area you've seen is pretty expansive and flat. We were brought in to do a corridor entry that was a little more intimate, a different experience, and something called a water garden, which also included waterfalls to aerate and further cool the water, as well as provide a different experience for visitors coming to this destination. So how did we get here? How did we get to, from Japanese gardens, from beautiful Japanese gardens to wastewater facilities? The answer, I think, lies a little bit in our smallest garden. It's actually tiny. We were honored, Hoichi and I were honored to consult with LEGO's creative team. I grew up with Legos. I don't know. I see there's many generations here, but Legos are awesome. And the Legos I grew up with didn't look like this, but they were doing a tranquil garden, and 109.99 seems kind of steep, I would say, for a Lego set. But actually, in this series, the Icon series, it's like moderately priced. So an Atari console is like $230-something, and if you want to go crazy, you can get the Titanic set for over $600. So the garden is like mid-range, and I actually did the math. For a Japanese garden, like a real one, it's a pretty reasonable price per square inch. And especially reasonable considering how generous Lego was in giving you all these features. You have a pagoda and cherry trees. There's a tea house that you can't, or a tea ceremony thing you can't really see, but there's a lot in there. We would not normally design a garden like this, but it makes you wonder, how did Lego come up with this tranquil garden? And I think it's because these are features that are associated with Japanese gardens. They're stereotypical of Japanese gardens. They're the things we often love to see. But to really understand what the Japanese garden is and how it gets tapped, how a little Japanese garden design and build company gets tapped for a 700-acre wetland and a tiny Lego garden, you have to look beyond the forms. So beyond just features, to principles of gardens. There are several words for garden, meaning garden in the Japanese language. Teien is one of them. And in this word, in these two kanji, you see an inherent duality that really sits at the fundamental heart of Japanese gardens. Territory or wild nature, and bordered fields or controlled, manipulated nature. A reverence for nature, for wild nature, has been part of the Japanese collective consciousness for many, many, many years, before organized religion. The ropes that you see tying these little islands, they demarcate sacredness. So even before much recorded history, the Japanese, the people on the islands, were actually recognizing kami, or divine forces, gods that would inhabit nature. And in fact, they inhabited everything, animate and inanimate. But sacred trees, sacred rocks, they would be marked by these beautiful rice straw ropes called shimenawa. And sometimes, and this is almost the earliest form of garden perhaps, they would clear land in the forest and place white pebbles there to mark a sacred space. There are places in Japan you can still see this. So where we're going with this is that Japanese gardens are an art, and they're an art that's been evolving for over 1,000 years. What you have out there is part of over 1,000 year tradition of art evolving. We're going to take a little brief dive through history with the lens of Japanese gardens. What we see is that this art, like any other art, has developed over time in response to many, many influences: culture, politics, economics, trends. And throughout the centuries, we see distinct garden styles appearing, some innovations, but all the time, all through the years, they are responding to the owners and the society, the owners of the gardens and the society of the time. So Heian period was aristocracy, all about the aristocracy. They had copied Chinese nobility culture, and it was this time of the arts flourishing. They had developed a form of writing, and they wrote like crazy. They wrote poems like crazy. Like if you wanted a promotion and you wrote a really good poem, it might get you a promotion. There was a lot of flirting going on because it was relatively peaceful, right? And due to the architecture and the norms of separating men and women, we get the world's first novel, The Tale of Genji, written by Murasaki Shikibu, a woman from the court, and it's pretty racy, and we're lucky that she also described the gardens in detail, because none of them actually exist today, but they do recreate them. I don't know this for sure, but I would say it's kind of like the Shakespeare Festival, where you want to go live that time again. So people dress up, and this is basically a drinking game. It's recreating a cute little creek where sake floats down the creek, and you've got to write a poem before it gets to you. I'm not sure how that works out in the end. But people love the Heian period just because the arts were amazing, and there's such great literature and poems that come from it. So this is a screen recreating some scenes from the Tale of Genji, and you can see the shinden architecture with these wings flowing out really defined how the gardens were. They were gardens meant to be viewed by boat or from a fixed position, mostly. Eventually all that loveliness and flirting came to an end, and the military government rose to power. So for the next few hundred years, Japan was in massive turmoil, like wars. This is when you get the shoguns and you get feudal fighting. It's a really destructive period of time. And we get 3 types of gardens. Even despite all of this going on, we get 3 distinct new types of gardens. The warlords were interested in showing their power, right, and glory. Gardens got more austere, and often they were built on the former estates of the Heian period nobility. But you see a shift. Also, Pure Land Buddhism became popular, and this religion promised a spot in the Western paradise of Amida Buddha. So if you're going to war every day, that sounds good. And the gardens became mirrors of the paradise gardens. A little bit later, you get one of the greatest leaps in Japanese design history, right? The ultimate abstraction. So the dry rock garden or Zen garden, you often see with super modern architecture these days, but actually it's ancient. It's an ancient form of Japanese garden design. The third design innovation in this period was the tea garden. And there's a lot to say about this, but just know that it's a unique style. It's highly detailed. And while tea was being enjoyed previously, it wasn't until the later part of this period that the rustic, intimate tea garden developed, the one that we know today in tea culture. So, where does it leave us? We're right around the Edo period. And Edo period, remember, everybody's fighting in Japan for hundreds of years. Finally, Tokugawa Ieyasu finally manages to unify everybody, sort of. And the Edo period becomes an era of relative peace and isolation. the capital moves, and one of the great things we get are these big pond and stroll gardens. The daimyo, the feudal lords, were required to build these, and it was pretty clever. The main guy was trying to make sure they were otherwise occupied, not putting their finances into uprisings, but they had to build gardens. Like, imagine if the President of the United States called all of the state capitals and said, hey, you guys, you all have to build huge, extravagant gardens, like right now. It would be wonderful, and they'd probably still exist today. Right? And maybe there would be less fighting. I don't know. It's worth trying. But that's what happened with these. And many of these stroll gardens survived, and you can visit them today. The Edo period also had a lot of stratification, right? So in social ranking. And the merchant class became wealthy, the cities became dense, and you got these teeny-weeny gardens called tsuboniwa. Right? So even if you have a tiny, narrow house in a dense city, you can build a garden with a courtyard. Enter the modern era. So Japan had been isolated for about 200 years, and more than 200 years. And eventually they were forced to open their doors. The Commodore Perry rocks up and says, you know, we're coming back, you better be ready. And the modern era becomes this import-export of Japanese culture. And gardens become one of the main export commodities. World fairs start, and the Japanese realize they've had their doors closed to the world for so long, they had no idea how much had gone on outside. They were a little behind, you know, in industrialization and a lot of things modern. So they did have gardens and they did have architecture, and that's what they showed the world, all over the world. The rest of modern history proceeds forward, right, with modernization. And one of the next big design styles to emerge is after World War II. So the bomb is dropped on Hiroshima, the war ends, and Zoki no Niwa, which you saw in the video, is the tradition that Hoichi comes out of. This is a style that's very naturalistic. It's using native plants partly because there's not that much other stuff available, right? The country's been destroyed in many places. So we'll talk more about Zoki no Niwa later, but suffice it to say that a naturalistic trend is coming into Japanese gardens. This is an example. You can see it's looser. There's more of a relaxed feeling. And then, because Western and Japanese culture were going both ways, this garden's actually in Japan, and you have a Western-style house, rose gardens, and a Japanese garden. Japanese gardens are made by a designer, and it seems obvious here because we have HK, but many people don't realize that. They think Japanese garden is like a cultural thing that just happens. It represents Japan. It's an art. There's a designer, and often they're artists. They're expressing themselves in relation to what their environment is, and often the changes. So you see crazy things like no greenery, you know, metal gardens, experimentation with materials and new geometries. And of course, post-war, we got friendship gardens, and there's many, many friendship gardens. You all probably know of some that exist throughout the United States and around the world. And finally, we're back at Zoki no Niwa. This style became the dominant style, the mainstream style post-war, and it remains so today. The thing about Zoki no Niwa is it was bringing comfort to super stressed out Japanese. Why were they stressed out? They had to modernize so fast. Traditional life was destroyed. The family structures were destroyed. People were moving to the cities and working in factories. So the stresses of modern life really helped Zoki no Niwa become a style of gardening that people wanted. They really wanted to relax. And ironically, that's exactly what this is for, too. so maybe the most modern material, plastic, right, understands that it's not really about culture, it's about tranquility, it's about relaxation. Lego is marketing this as a mindful activity. Why? Because they know that wellness, the wellness economy, is massive. $5.6 trillion is the global economy. And what this is, what these numbers come from, is like anything from a detox smoothie to a yoga mat or mental health services and pretty much everything in between associated with wellness. So there's a wide net, but it's all things that we are willing to spend money on to be well. So that seems to indicate either we're just like tremendous consumers around the world, which is probably true, but also that we feel deeply unwell as a population. So the idea of healing gardens is not new, right? Healing gardens and time in nature is part of this wellness economy. And it's an idea that's as old as our history. 3000 BC, the Chinese were tapping medicinal plants. The ancient Greeks built gardens in honor of their god of healing. And even in the 1800s, there was one of the first programs developed here in the United States through a Quaker hospital that was using plants therapeutically because they found that patients in a mental health institute seemed calmer and better when they worked out in the fields. Florence Nightingale noticed it. So we have this intuitive connection to nature. And, somebody like E.O. Wilson posits the biophilia, hypothesis, that we have this intuitive desire to have an affinity with living things. And science is trying to figure out, is that true and how? And if that's true, are there places and designs that are more effective than others at making us feel great, right? Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, environmental psychologists, they dug into this and they kind of explored three questions. Is this affinity real? How does it work? And are some patterns in nature better than others? There is a ton of scientific research out there and more every day. As we become an urban population, we're going to be a majority urban population on this planet soon, and often that means less access to nature. What we know is there's some really clear benefits. Stress reduction is huge. That is such a fundamental benefit of healing gardens. Positive distraction, pain mitigation, faster recovery times from certain surgeries was a famous research study, and then positive changes in biometric things. So we know that nature works, and even in short times. But what does a healing garden look like, right? We're not here to tell you that Japanese gardens have a monopoly on healing garden design. They can look like many things. But the healing garden concept is two things, right? The garden is a thing, a place, and healing is a process. And what we find is that there's a lot of effort spent on thinking about design and what to use and where to put it in proportions, of pathways and slopes, and that's important. But before that can be effective, you have to address how you perceive space. And again, the Kaplans tried to figure out what kind of space makes us feel the best, what kind of space that we perceive through our cognitive processes can make us feel the best. They talk about attention. So if you think of when you get burned out, driving in traffic or multitasking or in meetings that are driving you nuts, your directed attention is getting burned out, right? Involuntary attention is the kind of attention that you engage when you look at wind through the trees or a butterfly flying by. And they found that there are certain types of environments that actually restore your ability to function with directed attention when it's burned out. They discovered that it's through our cognitive processes we can reach that feeling of restoration. So it may not be so much which environment you're in, but more how you perceive your environment. We know that in a busy, cluttered office, maybe you're stressed out, maybe you're not so cool with your coworkers, there's a lot of things going on that make you feel ill at ease. And when you look at a forest, walking through the forest, there's something just intuitively easy about it. It's welcoming, right? They're both complex environments, but one of them just feels naturally better. So, HK is really the designer, and he is going to tell you how Japanese gardens handle this duality between design and perception.
Well, I'm looking at all your faces are so serious. Are you okay? Shall I stand up 1 minute or 30 seconds? Yeah, thank you. Because I asked you, I have to talk a little bit serious. Maybe you might sleep, so. Actually, is a healing garden, is dealing with space, nature's space. Over 60 years, our landscape mission has been to create for the people a space to effect oneness with nature based on Japanese garden landscape principle. That's our mission. In order to understand that space, I'd like to ask you understand few things. There some math is involved. Normally, of course, 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 1 = 3, of course. But in the Japanese way of landscape or other art form is 2 + 1 is not a 3. That's not a number. That's the space between those 3 items. This is showing the border setting. If somebody asked me, set for me the 3 borders, I never set like a left-hand side. That's the Western style. And the 3 of them is the same way. And this, among the 3 borders, among the 3 items, the space is that we are dealing with. It's not the item, the space. Tree is the same way. And one thing is different is any tree has a something try to move, something direction. That direction or force, you might say, to utilize the force creating the space. This is the top one is you might say pine tree, and bottom part is this is just maple, something like that. It's not the tree, not the borders, the space. The space understanding is lead to your heart is different consciousness. Japanese people, as you know, is asymmetrical, is number, and triangle is most of the art form in Japan is fundamentally to use that method. This is a flower arrangement. It's not gorgeous, but if you look at is the balance, somehow it's a harmony you feel. That's not the moon, that's the space showing here. And same way, triangle. You start to catch the beauty, the garden, any flower arrangement, you are starting understanding this, the space. That's, in order to understanding is, we have to work on our consciousness. From this method, this is maybe you have been on Anderson Garden, Illinois. I had to work about 38 years, this garden, talking about this kind of space. Don't stick to the triangle, scaling triangle, but when you're looking at is balance it, the beautiful, the space is the creator or Japanese art ikebana, the teacher or student is arranging, is not really measuring each item with feeling is your sense is creating the space. That space is successfully done. You feel, that's not you are talking about the white flowering tree or border. No, the space is affecting inner sense. How the inner sense to achieve, to understand, is like silence. It's a math, we understand the math, it doesn't work. Now is a silence. Silence is I take, shut off from outside of the noise, world noise. Then be silence. Then you can start to understand. To understand, to be silent, silence is another chore we have. Japanese people really like the bow. How much deeper you put the heads down is much more you are sincere. Is humble. Actually, it's not that way. They are doing that, but sometimes, yes. And or it's a Japanese gardens principle has each tools to become silent from outside of the world. Bridge usually sure is a major in a public garden or Japanese garden or even the private. I like to have a bridge because we, in order to try to cross the bridge, that moment, if you are thinking that's I'm going to different area, now I'm going to new place to see something, is you put that everything what you have in your inside is left. Leave that before crossing. That kind of psychological effect to the people, but inside. But not the one time we cannot do it, but that's the one of the tools also. And the gate is sure we have a gate in Japanese. Here too, little small one, but later on I'd like to show you. But that one, and this is the Morikami's, the left-hand side of Morikami is Anderson, and the Morikami is another south gate. More gate, but it's a gate is when you go into the gate, through the gate, it's you have in your mind, some people looking at the top, it's how they made it or something like that, but it's, again, you are going through new era, which another tools loosen up to drop your world concern and what you have in your mind. Pathway, another one. So Japanese garden, every step has designed to shake off your world opinion, angry, hatred, everything. One by one, leave around. Gradually become silence. Silence means it's more, you don't hear the noise. It's really starting to hear real things. That's Japanese garden does that. It's a pathway. Another pathway is a psychologically that you're going to the find is what is it, or anticipation. That thought, that's not a world thought. It's something you are expecting something. That moment you have world thought is angry or hatred or jealousy or anything, you are not thinking that. Little things, but that's a nozoki ishi, which is nozoki, it's when you go pathway going through turn and one rocks that stick out and looks like inviting something there to suggest them. Again, your mind is, let's go see there. See, that kind of thought. So many Japanese garden has it. It's Migakure is another one. It's a little bit you can see, but not clearly see it. That's the anticipation or curious. That thought, those kind of thought also another your noise drop off. You can see it's a cross by, there's the path is bending around. It's to try to invite you, kind of anxious to see that. It's the stepping stone is in Japanese garden is I say to even my crew is almost equal value of cell phone. Huh? Because the stepping stone never straight like this. You have to step by step. Step forward is your center. You are not thinking anything else. You have to be center there and become yourself. And then the turn is a bigger stone there. Usually stop and look at, usually landscaper plant a camellia or lantern or something to look at. And then they proceed another one. So the stepping stone is one of the nice tools become yourself. Ashimoto kakushi. Ashimoto is the bottom of the foot is a lantern. Is the Western way is to show how much expensive lantern I have here. Look at, but Japanese healing point of view is hide, purposely, partially hide. That's grace to teach you. Another shaking your worldly thought. Waterfall. This is a Japanese garden's heavenly fall. Most of the time, when the waterfall is the main, the scenery in the garden, most of the people think, and they don't want to hide the waterfall. But this Japanese garden or healing method is hide. Not entirely, but hide. Of course, this one, another interpretation is little makes the depths of that, but it's much more humility is showing that. This is a previous Michiko's picture show that, but it's you can see far side of the mountain is not belong here, the far end. But when you look at the garden here, it's the mountain is belong to this garden, which you are, where I am. The wonderful distance, wonderful is wide world I am in. The suggestion of that. And here and there we plant stimuli is nice fragrant flowers. That one is when go out to the garden and then some nice fragrant is where coming from. That thought itself in your mind, that's already some you are taking out. That time you are not thinking the political issue or your, maybe sicknesses. If ache that different me, but you are not thinking word thought there. So one by one, Japanese, or even, the one step out, that's if you look and carefully and with desire want to be, is a silent. It's a many tools. Otherwise, is a scenery or the place to relating to this effect. Based on that, Michi show you what we have done. Not everything is successful, but we will try to do is something meaningful.
Okay, I'm taking the serious scan here. If anyone wants to stand up and shake out, no, you're good. Okay. So we're going to show just a few Japanese Kurisu's healing gardens. I want to read something that an American landscape architect named Mark Keene wrote. He's actually an expert in Japanese gardens and has lived in Kyoto for decades. He wrote, "The Japanese garden is in a perilous situation." And he's writing about gardens in Japan right now. So remember the long history we saw, over 1,200 years of gardens being made and evolving and innovating. He writes that they are in a perilous situation. Its native habitat is being destroyed at an alarming rate to make room for tall, modern, more profitable buildings. At best, these buildings may have a forlorn scrap of a garden shoehorned into a corner in front. Even where there is space to be had, there is some question whether the Japanese garden can keep pace with society and still have meaning and purpose in the years to come. Overseas, certainly the Japanese garden languishes as a cultural artifact or a museum piece, sharing no cohesive tradition to give it a sense of belonging. Right? You would think that there would be no Japanese gardens, but we want to show you how, while in Japan, that may be a little bit true, actually. That's a whole other conversation. But here, in the United States, let's just say North America, Japanese gardens are actually thriving, and they are beginning in many ways, especially the public ones, like the ones you have here, they're beginning to find new purpose and engage in different ways beyond culture. So let's look. You have seen Anderson Gardens. This started as a backyard project. A wealthy businessman loved Japanese stuff, and he wanted a garden, and it got bigger, and he bought more properties. It got bigger and bigger. It became amazing. He ended up making it a nonprofit, gifting it to the city, and it's become this incredible cultural gem for Rockford, Illinois. It's about 5 acres? 15 acres, okay. It's big and it's very well maintained. It's a place to see authentic Japanese culture, amazing architecture built by carpenters from Tokyo who came. You saw pictures in the movie of them building the tea house with no hardware. This is Japanese joinery, which is an art in itself. So there's places certainly to find solitude, but Anderson Gardens has also embraced community in a big way. In fact, sometimes controversial. There's been webinars about whether you should have concerts in Japanese gardens or not. But in case anybody's wondering about that, remember that in the Heian period and also Edo period, especially where people were partying, these gardens were for parties, right? So what we're doing today is maybe new for Japanese gardens recently, but not that new in their long history. Anderson Gardens is in many ways a microcosm of the evolutionary arc, if you will, that public gardens outside of Japan, some of the most successful, are on. And that goes from maybe first being a sister city or a backyard garden or a friendship garden that may have gone into neglect because, you know, the people who were interested in it in the beginning, they moved away or whatever. It's hard to keep up the interest. It's so fun to build a garden, and then like maintaining it is another thing, right? Anderson Gardens has excellent maintenance, and that's another lecture. That's a very interesting lecture, how to maintain gardens. But the other thing they've done is understand that what they have is not just a Japanese garden that's interesting for people who like Japanese culture, but they have this incredible healthcare resource. They have a wellness hub. And if you go to their website, right on the top navigation, you'll see this wellness in nature, right? I need my glasses. Yeah, wellness in nature. And if you scroll down, you see them educating you, and you see that they're offering like this amazing amount of programming in the garden. So gardens, until fairly recently, Japanese gardens, were, like Mark Keane said, sort of museum pieces, right? You go, you walk around, you look, isn't that pretty, you take pictures, and you go home. But they're becoming places where you go to eat, to drink, to enjoy, to gather. They're getting activated. And one of the biggest ways that they're doing this is through wellness. So Anderson also inspired another garden in Rockford, Illinois. You saw also in the movie called Rosecrans. This is a substance abuse treatment center for young adults, for youth. And what Rosecrans figured out was this garden could be an asset to their existing programming and encourage additional programming. They, when the weather permits, this is Rockford, Illinois, they go walking through the gardens. The groups of patients go walking through the gardens up to 2 times a day, sometimes more. And they have found that certain therapies they've always used that they know work, journaling, breathing, talk therapies, that they have sometimes become much more effective in a nature setting. HK designed special features for their program. They're a 12-step program, 12-step recovery program. So this waterfall has 12 different cascades. And the patients there get to learn all of this about the garden. We also designed the garden right up close to the building. So as you can see, there's lots of windows. It's immersive even when you're inside. We did a kind of post-occupancy survey questionnaire, and I love this, right? Have you been in a facility where you were unable to go outside? If so, how did that make you feel? Yes, like a psychopath, right? Recovery is hard work. Is the garden in any way helping you to recover? If so, how? Yes, it's calming and makes things make sense. I feel like this is super profound. Teenagers can be profound, right? It's so simple, but isn't that what everybody wants? You just want things to make sense. So this garden is called the Serenity Garden, and Rosecrans has gathered together a whole bunch of poems written by their patients and published a book. And I want to share an excerpt from one of my favorites, and it's a poem that actually opened my eyes into how gardens can support recovery. It's by Karina D. The Serenity Gardens. As you let yourself hear the birds along the water, as you let your hair gently blow away from your face, exposing you, your anger melts away. How can you be angry in a place made of beauty? Your sadness evaporates. How can you be sad in a place so serene? You try to be indifferent, but it's hard not to care. How can you not in a place made of peace? Most importantly, the loneliness in your heart is no longer loneliness, but peace. And for once, in this world of deceit, hurt, and sadness, you feel okay to be with yourself. You know the gardens are not here to hurt you, lie to you, or abandon you. They're not going anywhere, and they return as surely as the seasons do. By trusting their calmness, serenity, you somehow trust yourself. So loneliness and hope are a big deal for healing gardens. And we know that loneliness has become declared an epidemic, especially since COVID and lockdowns and lots of changes to social situations. The Morikami Gardens down in Delray Beach, Florida, the one that is responsible for me hanging out with this guy, is a 17-acre public park. It's part of the Parks and Recs Department of Palm Beach County. And just a quick little history. It was a result of a former Japanese farming colony around the early 1900s. They came to grow tomatoes and pineapples and ultimately failed for a number of reasons. But one guy stayed on, George Morikami, and sorry, that's him on the right, the bottom right, looking really dapper. Everybody else eventually left or moved away. George Morikami stayed and donated his land to Parks and Rec. It became the Morikami Japanese Gardens, and you can stroll around about a mile of pathways to different gardens inspired by those different design eras that we talked about. And Hoichi really designed this very intentionally as a healing garden for the world. It was, I think he mentioned the turn of the millennium, actually. There was a lot going on. We felt the world was particularly divisive, 25 years ago. We still felt that. People were looking for comfort. And the Morikami became a place of a clinical study. It was a study with the Florida Atlantic University School of Nursing, and it was investigating whether garden walks could be an effective intervention for depression among older adults, and that was 55 and older. In Florida, that's like everybody. So, it was a good place to do this study. And it's a really interesting study that they used guided imagery. So they had 3 different groups, and the control was art therapy, which is a known successful intervention for depression. And the results were that all groups improved. So garden walking was proven in this study to be as effective as traditional interventions. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that this program saved lives. I was fortunate enough to actually be an HK stand-in. He wasn't in Florida, and they wanted him to come to a reception for participants. And if you ever go to a reception of self or clinically diagnosed depressive people, I can tell you it's a weird vibe in the room. But at the end of the gathering, people had shared their experiences, both therapists who had been in the program with groups and individuals, and there was not a dry eye in the room. It was so powerful that I am really grateful to have had that opportunity. So it literally prevented suicide. So when you think of healing gardens as being sort of a soft thing or a complementary thing to traditional medicine, it's true that they can be. They can reduce stress, they can keep you, your heart healthier, but they can literally save lives. That study was so successful that it continued to be funded for many years, and the Morikami has worked to reach out to over 40 organizations who could benefit from these garden walks. They continue to do that. So let's go from the subtropics, the hot subtropics, to a little bit closer, right here, right across the street. And I know most of you are familiar with this area, but in case there's a few who aren't, we're looking at the community hospital across the street. And that dense green spot is a healing garden, a public garden that anyone can access, whether or not you're a patient at the hospital, right? Yes. I think you can just walk right in. This is the before and after. And there are many people here who were involved in this project from the beginning, people who actually inspired it and made it happen. So I just want to say thank you to all of those people as well, because it's an incredible project that, as you can see, has tremendous effect. This is the site plan. So when you go, you'll notice that you can walk all through the garden and still feel private. There's 4 distinct populations we designed for. The public on the bottom there. There's a corridor and the cafeteria. Going around to the left is, going around to the left is the oncology wing. You go up to the top, there's a cafeteria. Sorry, I said that wrong, didn't I? Bottom birth wing, left side, oncology wing. And the top is the public corridor with the cafeteria. The right side is a teaching room. And all of those gardens are designed specifically for those populations. The middle you can walk through and enjoy privacy without bothering anybody else. So don't hesitate. Go check it out. More Japanese architecture, steps, and shelter is important here for sure. You want to have lunch outside and it's raining, you need a good place to sit. And you could just put a little, Home Depot hut up and people would still go and eat lunch there. But in the Japanese garden, every detail matters. A lot of what HK was saying is about detail, every single step, and not just every single step, but how you step. Right? You can march down a concrete path, or you can be forced, sort of gently forced, to be mindful of the uneven stone that you're walking on stepping stones. So in that regard, this is the ceiling of where you can go eat lunch. Whether you're looking up or looking down into a waterfall, every detail matters. We were lucky to interview patients years ago here at the hospital and get more insight into how it was impacting people's lives. This is the garden right outside of the oncology wing. You see the curved wall. This garden, as I think many of you know, was award-winning. The wing was award-winning. The garden gathered a lot of attention, and it became such a positive influence in the hospital itself and the town that there was kind of a ripple effect. And actually, this ripple effect is this, right? For those of you who may not know, this used to be a big grass field, right? Just a field, an open field. In that first aerial, you can look across the street and there's nothing there. But thanks to the spirit of the community and the design of the garden, many good things happened. It inspired this entire campus that we are on today. The colleges, the amazing hotel, this place that we're in. And what was, I dare I say, like dying town, at one point, Lebanon was a dying town, just like a lot of rural towns in America and all over the world. When their industries that built them go away and there's no employment, people have to leave. You know, kids can't stay. There's no place to raise a family. What are you going to do? The garden and all of the community that supported it played a huge role in revitalizing this town. And not only that, but that revitalization, that ripple effect, had another ripple effect, an even huger, far-reaching one, perhaps. It went all the way to Japan. Yeah, okay, so let me summarize. So, Japanese guy, Japanese gardens, Lebanon, Oregon, back to Japan, right? And then Japan came here. So literally what happened was this town made so many waves in their revitalization that Kobe, the city of Kobe in Japan, you might know it as like beef, Kobe beef, or the earthquake, which is not as happy as Kobe beef. This town is the city is looking to revitalize, and they're looking to nature. And they heard about this, and they wanted to come see. So literally a delegation came, they walked through the garden, they checked out your gardens, and they went back home, and they built one. So this is actually a pop-up garden. It's a complete, like, the boulders are real, the trees are real, everything's real. It's a pop-up temporary garden that was kind of a test case right at the main train station. And Hoichi was there to help design. When people heard, in Florida, people heard that my dad was going to build a garden in Japan, they were like, why does Japan need Hoichi to build a garden for them, right? And that's a really exciting answer, because in this whole import-export thing that Japanese gardens have been doing for centuries, right? They have exported their gardens outside of Japan, and they have imported Western culture. What's happening now, in great part thanks to your town and your gardens, is that Japanese gardens are being re-imported into Japan with a new vision. So believe it or not, it is uncommon in Japan for them to think of their gardens as healing gardens. They're cultural, they're old, they're for rich people. We take things for granted that are part of our culture sometimes. And it took exporting their garden and 60 years to re-import it with a new idea. So, like modernizing after the bomb, Japan is quick to catch up. And this garden had a really charming ambassador, which I'd never seen before. And it had this iPad that gave you the history of the garden and stuff about HK, and it was very user-friendly, the whole thing. And it also did this. I don't know, it gave this information, and then it broke into a dance. So I love that ambassador and hope that he or she appears again. So continuing ripple effect, the pop-up garden was a success, people loved it, and they said, okay, let's do this for real. A little bit nearby, but in a little bit different place, they built a permanent garden just recently called Isogami Park Healing Garden. Hoichi went back to assist, and I'm going to hand it over to him to tell you all about it.
The time is okay? Time is, we have okay?
You're okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, is Isogami Healing Garden showing the robot. I asked them, get the robot, serve the coffee to the people, but they're so expensive that they just give the robot there. But idea is we are cyber souls, or the AI's age is going into it, and we cannot ignore. We have to go with the movement, but this side, which is our space, the oneness with nature space, it's not much. It's going on like a speed of the AI. But anyhow, this opportunity in the Kobe is wonderful, and this is the showing right now is finishing the garden, and again, is afterwards. I never put together the measurement and the scaling triangle, but this the composition is the people coming to it, hugging you, that's friendly, and as a healing garden is made. Probably is the first one as a public garden, as a healing garden in Japan, and much more. Here is more. So before, and even that they very impressed from the COVID officers. One try I did it. I did it. I asked them why suggested. The plaque is a little word. Make it unintentionally. It's a sitting area. Just place it. This said is not. I didn't have the time to translate, but this one is listen to by eyes and seeing by ears, huh? Right? But you have heard this kind of things probably heard before, but again, 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 1 is know that concept, the space, which I'm talking about, the oneness with nature. In order to feel, experience is you have to transform your consciousness is normal. The noise is away from there and silence the world noise and quiet yourself, which is, in other words, empty. You are sort of empty your heart, and then here is a real sound, real inspiration, real hope is coming up. I hope I have time, but let me guide you very quickly running to this garden with only, I can apply to 4 with a patient coming through across the street, and the bamboo forest. Can hear the bamboo's squeaking noise, I hope. Something out the bamboo is, making a noise by wind. But besides that, coming to, and the little gate goes through, which is humble yourself, humility. Try to go through that little gate. Going somewhere is there. By that time, you have another something you have in your mind, or patient mind is hopefully behind it. And little sloping up, and I don't have a plaque, but it's a sitting area. I would probably say in I'm in the natures is where is my heart is, or something like that. And then go to is a gazebo, and there is a center is some kind of the straight English word is a God's eyes, but it's a center. It's you feel you are in the centers, the nature, and then beside that is enjoy how the running the creek and go through, and the top of this side of the top here is that it's said, it's be silent. Let's listen the story. Something like that. Then they go toward the more waterfall, and behind the waterfall is this maybe the ears, the hear by ears and listen by eyes. That word there is you can hear the noise of the waterfall, and you have to sit down close. This plaque's meaning is much more different way imagination in your mind. Then they go down to the other side of the pathway, and this is, I don't have it. But that's the gazebo right here, is sitting and looking at the pond and the waterfall, and the whole garden is embracing you. I am not alone with nature. Some kind of word, just suggesting. This is the only suggestion, but it's the garden going through is not item, is a much more deeper sense of the feeling, experience. Is we try to enforce the people. And now I heard, not by eyes, but I heard very, very strange place, and nobody doesn't want to go. We made 2 wastewater treatment garden, but this is a little bit too much. But I think about it, and remember the silence, and to hear real voice. Those inmates, this facility is 2,000 inmates and maximum security. They don't have anything. And white, blue shirt and jeans, and lunchtime every day is a hamburger. And but the boys came from one small group, Asian Pacific Family Club. They come up, something, want to do good things. We like to make a peace. Later on, is when I meet is a healing garden, but they don't have anything that's silent from the world, and they are pure heart, something do. Of course, they did the bad things past, but most of the guy is a life sentence, 27 years, 32 years. Those kind of guy is want to do something. This is probably my line of the work. So I met them. Wow, those guys is happy and joyous. I wonder where I am. I'm came here is from my jail. This is not the jail, it's the penitentiary, or not. It's something I miss the thinking here. That much atmosphere they had it, because they have only want to do something good. And 50 years, 60 years, I have been doing the nature's and the space to heal the people. Let's do it. But they show me, don't go big, because never administration, yes. So they show me, they gather the twig from the play field, and then make a bridge, and gather the little gravel, and this is the koi pond, which is just this much. It's okay. Will you design for us? No. Let's think big. And I know from pure heart and willing to do something that good is no size. Is let's dream big. So actually we meet together, the heart together and decide to do it. That joy is before anything started, is somebody heard in the 2,000 people, it's a really group of the people there. But very joyous voice. Hi, when you are going to do, something like that. It's change the whole spirit. That much powerful of the coming from pure heart to desire something to do it. Measuring, this is a place, will be the garden, and this is the left-hand side is 4 stories, the jail, and design. This is the second time I believe the design, but it's the state law. You cannot plant more than 3 feet trees, and you cannot use more than 3 feet borders. And pond is, you cannot deep pond. You cannot make the sort of our Japanese garden, what I'm wishing they can have it. But this design is, along the way, is healed administration office and many other people. Of course, the friend, the people is there, is 2,000 people. Some of them is really territorial, but it's they're really having starting a good atmosphere. And as I said, this project is not, I said let's do it. They want to do the garden, not from me. That came out from their pure heart, came out. End up, it's working hard. Those guys is so strong. It's my leg is their arm, kind of. Is work hard and very speeded way, and we made the garden here. This is from the top view, but the little $500 garden went to actually close $500,000 garden. All they made the effort to put the money together, and also it affected to the other community. And also administration also give a permit to use much bigger trees. But it's I don't have the picture, but when we bring the trees, inmate is crawling underneath of the pine trees. I didn't see more than 40 years. This one, it's a crying and want to sleep with the tree. That much nature has something power. And the big thing is, again, to remind you, is healing garden is the affecting or is come out, the power is many ways. It's here is administration is healed, the group, their friends healed, and of course they themselves is even like a pure is the sense the heart, but still more energetic, and the dream and the hope heal. this is the lower angle is finishing there, and the pathway and the creek is a duck. It's one of the inmate. Is a lifetime sentence guy. Is wrote a book, and the opening. The book is Washington D.C. something. Anyway, is really they have. As much as his power and the willingness to work the hard. This left side guy is, I believe, is also sentenced to lifetime, and he's just digging into the soil and loosening up the tree balls, something like that. I can see how is the nature and the man's oneness is wonderful and powerful and inspirational. Opening day is one of the guy here. Is his name is Global. It's a huge guy. But anyhow, it's that smile. It's never imagined. He's a member of the penitentiaries. That guy is, this smile is nothing to any hint of the agony or any pride or anything. It's like a life is enjoying. That's I felt. As I said, is healing effect is a many ways work. She mentioned Anderson Garden. Mr. Anderson is one time or two times, just talk to me. Is Hoichi is the garden is strange things. Is many ways effect. Yes, the garden is almost the finish, and the little later on is governor is notice that, and the governor is Washington D.C. Washington D.C. is, of course, gathering the information. Went to Japanese embassy, and Japan is ambassador. That time, Hisaki Ichiro is twice. He came to Anderson's actually house, stayed, and also the acquaintance in the business world is brought in multi-billion companies. Japan Railroad Company came to the Illinois. So the power of the garden and that this garden even went to Japan, and here is rippling effect is so many affected neighbors in the communities, revitalize the whole town. We believe this power, not only the garden, but if we understand the nature and we have take the barrier or nature in us by silence. Be oneness feeling with nature is a tremendous power, has it. This garden proved it. And I'm so happy what I have been screaming 60 years, reproved by this garden is certainly we know nature, garden has a power and they can do tremendous things. And have to be balanced to other side of the world. AI, we cannot ignore it, but we have to bring up this side of our world, you might say, nature's understanding. This is the garden, which my teacher's garden. This garden changed my life. And I look at every time the tree is nice way leaning, curving, and the ground is gently is arranged. I know is the individually, even not only business world or movement of the company, but it's individually change. I tell you, when I having a breakfast and have a tea, is take the one hand and hold it and feel the warmness of the cup, and close the eyes and drink, and to understanding that we are living the whole thing together. That's different way of the express with the oneness with nature. This garden, community people, many help and the donation, everything helped this garden. That's what came. And the tremendous effect we have, but we can go more. And this effect, other community or world even, in Japan already came here, but let them know. And I hope this, you have done 3 gardens, is as a seed for the world to let them know how the nature's oneness feeling, if we understand it's a tremendous power, we have it. Thank you very much.